Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on study strategies in a world of digital distractions. We'll get started in just a few minutes. I'll give you some time to log in, get settled. While we're all trickling in here, if you want to share where you're joining us from in the chat, we would love to hear that. Again, we're just getting started. Please join us. Let us know where you're joining from. Illinois, Ohio, South Dakota. I saw Pakistan. Love to see Orem, Utah. Oh my gosh, they're streaming in so quickly now, I can't even keep up. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on fostering optimal study strategies in a world of digital distractions. We're going to get officially started in just a minute. As people join us, please tell us where you're joining from in the chat. We'll go over some housekeeping items in the next minute or two, and then I'm just going to turn it over to our wonderful presenter today. Oh my gosh. So where else?
Seeing a lot of Midwest.
Texas, yeah. Dayton,
Yeah,
South
Midwest. Way to go.
Alabama,
Right, New York, Hudson Valley.
Puerto Rico.
Oh,
Great. Okay, well, welcome everyone. We
ooh,
are now at 101, so I feel
greetings,
confident that a
Spain.
lot of people have joined us today. My name is Andrea Bergoa. I am the Higher Ed Course Adoption Marketing Manager here at APA Publishing. And we're going to start with just a few housekeeping items before I turn it over to Regan today. So thank you for attending. First, methods of communication. Most of you have discovered the chat. Please use the chat, especially to talk to your fellow attendees. If you have questions for myself or Regan, please use the Q&A feature. That is going to be much easier for us to see. As you can see, the chat can get very lively and it can move very quickly. So if you want us to see a question from you, please use the Q&A. It is in the bottom left center of the Zoom window. Everyone is muted just to keep things orderly. Auto captioning has been enabled and can be accessed via the closed captioning button at the very bottom of your screen. Resources. So we will be sharing the recording of this, and that does include the chat. So please don't feel that you've missed something. If you've missed something in chat, we will be sharing the recording after the session. It will have the chat transcript, so you will have access to everything. We will also be sharing any additional resources. I know if you use this QR code right here, you can get a copy of the slides. We will also send those afterwards. And as far as your attendance today, so as a recognition of your attendance today in this session, we will be sending attendance certificates. Please expect those in the next few days. They will not be sent out immediately. Unfortunately, that process is not automated. And you can download those, share them on social media, put them in your CV. But yeah, those are my housekeeping items. So if you have any questions for me as far as technology goes or anything that I have covered in the last few minutes, please send me a message. But with that, I will turn that over to our wonderful host, Dr. Regan Gurung from Oregon State University and co-author of Study Like a Champ. Take it away,
Thank
Regan.
you so much, Andrea. And welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. For those of you who are in the nighttime zone, wow, cheers to you for being on here. Great to see folks from Spain and Germany and Pakistan. Absolutely super to see you all. Thrilled to be here. This is something trying to get students to study, especially in a world of digital distraction, is a really big something that I've been focusing on a lot. And I just want to underscore what Andrea said. I will be upfront and say that I love these opportunities to share a lot of information in a short amount of time. I am also pretty good because I know my stuff relatively well that I will monitor both the chat and the Q&A. And I really want to take advantage of the fact that this is synchronous, right? This is synchronous. For those of you who are watching this live, and I know some of you are watching this recorded later, but for those of you watching it live, I really want to try to capitalize on the fact that you have made the time to be here live with me. So uh, if you have any questions, pop them in. Tanya, as far as scrolling up for the QR code, the last slide has it more centered because I'm sort of as scrolled as I can on my screen. So you know the last slide will have it right in the center, so you should be able to scan it. And if you can't wait for the last slide, let me say right now I have a bit.ly link, and it is Gurung distract. So you can, it's bit.ly / Gurung distract. That'll get you there. But welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Just so much good stuff. Study like a champ is something that I've set myself to really get my students to be able to do. And all of us can think about champions. We've just had the Olympics. I just love this picture. The expressiveness that I see in Gabby Thomas's face on winning. And we can picture champs, right? We can picture champs and we can picture champions. But I don't think our students realize all the work that goes into being a champion. And what I love is this very same race that you see Gabby Thomas winning the gold with that great expression. This is her face right before she started that. And that's focus. And I love this because even when the camera panned on all the athletes in the starting blocks, you could see some athletes who, as the camera came by, they were like, hey, how's it going? And as it went by Gabby Thomas, this was her face. Focus, focus. There was this absolute focus. And that's what I say to my students is that if you want to learn, you've got to be able to focus, right? Yes, like these athletes, you've got to know what to do and you've got to practice and you've got to practice and you've practiced. But when it really comes down to it, you've got to focus. And focus is pretty tough in this world when we are surrounded by distractions, right? I love this. TikTok brain may be coming for your kids' attention span. And let's be fair, there are many of us adults, non-kids, who are also watching TikTok a lot. Um, my big peeve, and really what got me to put this whole talk together was when I looked out at my students one day and I saw the fingers doing this, right? And the fingers were doing this, scrolling Instagram. And of course, nowadays, apparently, if you want to scroll, you don't even have to touch your phone. There's now software where you could either just make this symbol or you can raise an eyebrow and it'll catch your eyebrow raising and scroll your Instagram for you. So, wow, that's one heck of a crazy world, and I think that's why this. You know, how do we get our students to focus? It's not just give them the right strategies, right? And cognitive science has been talking about these strategies for a very long time. Sneak preview, I'm going to let it out of the bag. Most of you here probably have heard about and have your students do retrieval practice and do space practice, right? And don't get me wrong, I'll get to that too. But by this point, 2024, most folks, especially those of you who are interested enough to come, are somewhat familiar with at least retrieval practice and space practice. But the big challenge is, how do we get our students to study when they've got all these technological distractions, right? When they're sitting with their phones that has TikTok, that has um, Instagram, that has all these funky things going on. And of course, yes, we've got AI. So I've shuffled, let me deal. I've divided up the remaining time together into three really main parts. I want to start with pulling the camera back a little bit and talking about why this is seen by many as an age of angst, right? What else is going on with our students as they sit there? Those distractions, what's going on? In part two, I'm going to dive into really taking a look in the classroom. And in part three, I'm going to unroll some potential solutions and some possibilities of what we can actually do. And I want to say something right off the bat. from the next slide on, these are slides, many of which I actually show and use in my classes. It's not just, ooh, secret between us teachers. No, I share this with my students and I say, this is why I'm talking about it. These are the issues. So, especially when you get to the end, use that QR code. You are free. Please, please, please take those slides, use them in your classes. Uh, Andrew and I were talking before we started. I don't start teaching until next Thursday. I believe there are a few other Northeast universities who are also like some of us West Coasters. I don't even start till next Thursday, but boy, am I putting things into place to really make sure that my students can study without distraction. So, and I will tell you, many of the slides you're going to see in the next 30 minutes, my students will be seeing on day one and on day two in those first few weeks to really get them going. All right, so that's the deal. People good with that? Let's see some OKs in the chat. So I know you're with me. How about a few OKs in the chat? There's the part one, part two, part three. Thank you for those OKs, people. Super. Glad you're with us. Okay, rock and roll. So here's the deal. Mona, QR code coming right at the end now at this point. Uh, all right, part one. This is actually a screen capture of a wonderful video with that title, Is the Internet Ruining Our Mental Health? And I put it up there. So when you get the slides, you may want to check that out. If you want a really, really quick summary uh, of all that Jonathan Haidt and Jean Twenge talk about, and I'll put them up in just a second. This short little internet is video is just absolutely wonderful because it's really summarizes a lot of these issues about what's really going on in our students' lives, right? We look out there, and even my example of seeing my students, some of my students thumb scrolling. But what else is going on? Why are they using the internet? What's the mental setting that they're experiencing, right? So here's why we think about this a lot, because for the last few years, we've been hearing that generations are different, right? A few years ago, Gene Twenge wrote Generations. For those of you who have been in higher education long, this is my 26th year in higher education. And even though I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old from whom I learn a lot about what's going on in high school and middle school, it's still been 30 years since I've been in high school or middle school or college, and over 30 years since I've been in college. So if you're not sure about how those students sitting in front of you are different, I think understanding them is a very good first step. And you don't, and here's your little study sheet, folks. You don't have to read the entire Generations book. I jumped straight to the chapter on the age of my students. And I will tell you that the data that Gene Twenge provides, their attitudes, their behaviors, really, really helpful for me as I looked out at that class, as I look out and I teach 300 plus students. When I looked out at those students, just reading that chapter on what is normative for their generation really helped me design my pedagogy. So that's quick tip number one. Check out Generations, at least check out that one chapter. That's the age group of our students. All right. All right. Quick tip number two. A lot of the summer has been caught up with people reading The Anxious Generation, right? And this is the big, we should ban social media because it's bad. And again, right, my peeve about seeing my students with their little thumbs scrolling, that would solve my problem, social media banned. Well, Jonathan Haidt's book is actually getting a lot of people talking because of the book. Almost directly, my high school daughter came back and said, "This term, the term that started, they have now are clamping down on no social media use in the classroom," and that was not the case even in the spring. All over the world, people are clamping down on social media use. I was talking to a colleague and friend from the University of Adelaide who said in Australia they are clamping down on social media. That's happening all over the place, right? And the whole Jonathan, the hate argument here is because of the iPhone, our students sitting in front of us are different, are in a different environment. And most importantly, the big argument here that's getting everybody thinking is that because of phones, mental health is different. Now, I'm sure you've heard some variation of this somewhere. I'm going to save you a lot of time and in about under 5 minutes, give you the most important things for us to think about as we look out at our students. I also want to say if you are a data nerd like me, Jonathan Haidt provides a complete website called The Evidence. And I've put a screenshot for you up there. It's called The Evidence. And all the stuff that he talks about in the book, all the studies, all the data are on that Google form called The Evidence. And I just love it, not just because I'm a show me the data kind of guy, but because very often I take some of that data and show it to my students. And again, some of these slides I will be showing to my students. So I want to give you a sense of what's going on. Here's the big deal with the argument, right? The big deal with the hate argument is this. So our students are spending less time with their friends. When you look at the data from 2005 to more recently, the amount of time, minutes per day spent with friends is dropping dramatically. Okay. What is this tied to? Well, this seems to be tied to more social media use, right? Uh, 2007, the iPhone rolled out. By 2011, most of America had smartphones, right? So 2007 iPhones, 2011, most of America, most of the world had smartphones. And for the longest time, and especially if you read Gene Twenge's Generations, this relationship was talked about as correlational because that's all the data we had, right? But as time went on, and especially by the time Haidt wrote The Anxious Generation, which came out, I think, earlier this year, we're now beginning to see more causal links, right? And so it's not just phones come out and social media, people are spending less time with their friends, but here's the big troubling thing. The mental health is changing, depression. The book has loneliness, anxiety, and all of that. I'm just showing you depression. When you take a look at the trends in depression, yes, they are going up. All right, much worse for girls than for boys. Andrea, 2.5-year-old girl, those of us with daughters have to pay a little bit more attention to what's going on, right? But so it's going up for boys and girls, but much more for girls, right? And again, once upon a time, 3 years ago, this was correlational data, but there's a lot now accumulating correlational data, right? Really? Correlational data? Yes. Why? Because when studies now have interventions, when they remove social media, you see significant changes from changes in mental health. What you see on the screen right here is one of the studies that showed the welfare effects of social media. In these This was a 2020 study done primarily with Facebook. And what you see are effect sizes. And for those of you who haven't played with effect sizes recently, yes, they have to be significant, but again, you want them to the right of that red line. And what you see in for a whole range of mental health outcomes, happiness, life satisfaction, subjective well-being, when when the participants were asked not to use, were made not to use Facebook for a period of time, their mental health went up. All right. So very, very, very straightforward causal relationships. You take away Facebook, mental health goes up. And now since 2020, we are seeing a few of those studies pop up all over the place. And again, if you want more of that, check out the evidence page from Haidt's book. The big issue is, so again, when we look out at our students, we see distraction, we see scrolling, we see thumbing, but we've also got to think about what's going on with mental health. How many of them are maybe using that because they are not feeling good? And that's a point I'm going to come back to in about 20 minutes or so, right? But there's distractions out there. For whatever reason they're using it, there are distractions out there, causing many in higher education to basically stay in higher ed in particular. We are witnessing a stunning, in quotes, level of student disconnection. All right. Uh, and I think I love that word disconnection here because, right, you think with social media, we're now so much more connected in our hands, but there's that disconnection. And when you look out, and if you are somebody who's seen students not coming to class as much, delaying on turning in assignments, these are all the factors that we have to keep in mind. Okay, so end of part one. What's the story? As we've got more social media, we're seeing increases in depression, loneliness, anxiety. There is now evidence that it's causal in nature, right? And a lot of it seems to be tied to those devices that are in everybody's hands. So let's go into exactly where it's going on. I want to take a look into the classroom. All right, let's take a look into the classroom. In the context of mental health, in the context of all that's going on, take a look at what's going on in the classroom. And I want to share with you, for those of you who like doing active learning in the classroom, one of my favorite active learning exercises is I show my students and discuss a lot of what I'm going to discuss with you in the next 10 minutes. I have this discussion, I show them the data, and then I get them into groups and I say, I've just shown you the data. Now you tell me, should I ban social media in the classroom? Okay. And mind you, as you will see with this data, you look at this data and it seems to be a resounding, oh my gosh, how could you not? You unethical professor letting us be distracted in this way. Well, what they come up with isn't exactly what you think, but it's just a wonderful opportunity for student engagement. And I want to see in the chat if some of you, I'm going to ask you this question. After you see all this data, and when I ask students, should I ban social media? Here's a question for you, people. What percent of students, and again, sneak preview, the data is bad. What percent of students say, yes, please ban social media? Anybody have a guess? Mark goes with 20%. Rosalie raises, oh, I see 187. Most of them are in the 20 and the 30s. Oh, I see a 5%. Yeah, 70% of people, 70% of students say, no, do not ban it. So those of you who are 20 and 30, you're absolutely right on. 70%, even with the data I'm going to show you, 70% say, no, 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 don't ban it. Why? Freedom. They love the freedom to choose. And that's really something to think about as well. So 70% of students say, I've seen the data, but still do not ban it. Let us make the decision. So just a really important thing to keep in mind there. So what is some of this data? Folks, my students love some of this data. I'm going to go through the first few a little quickly because I think you've run into them before. They're sort of older, but I've got some really cool new ones for you as well. So here's the deal, right? What's going on in the classroom? There are distractions. Well, one of the things I love sharing with my students, and this is probably one of the oldest studies I'll talk about, even though it's only 4 or 5 years old, is even the mere presence of your smartphone can be distracting. And this is a wonderful study. If you have only time to talk about one study, talk about this one study on your first day, your first week, or the first few weeks of class. This is, and I shared with my students. And a big shout out to my student artist, Paige Herbert, who drew this up for me. And by the way, if you want some of this artwork, I'm going to be showing you a link in about 10 minutes where you can get all this sort of stuff to pop into your slides, even be this and more. But here's what was done in the study. Quite simple. They told students, look, take your phones and I'd like you to put your phones off. All right, pretty good. But there were three groups. One group had their phones off, sitting right next to them, right? Their phone was sitting on a table right next to them. The second group had their phones off, but it was in their backpacks, which were right on the table or at their feet. And the third group had to put their phones off and put the phone outside the room. All three groups took a quiz, and what do you know? The group who had their phones out of the room did significantly better than the other two groups. All right. Now remember, all three groups had their phones off. All three groups did not touch it. Perry, you're right on. Out of sight, out of mind, right? And that out of mind thing is also pretty key here. When students were told, hey, why didn't you not do as well? They said, I could see my phone and I wondered if somebody had messaged me. And I wondered if I had a notification, right? Very absolutely out of sight, out of mind, right? And this data really helps because those students who say, oh, my phone's off, but it's sitting right there on the desk next to them. I show them this and go, yeah, that's a problem. I'm right with you. The buzzing of the smartwatches. I've been in meetings where with students and with faculty, and their phone buzzes and they look at it, and I'm like, okay, I thought we're here. Anyway, so right. out of sight, out of mind is one thing, right? Exhibit A as you were, but that's not all, right? That's not all. Um, it's divided attention. Claire, I want to pick up on a great point, Claire. The urge to grab my phone for literally no reason and scroll is so strong. I gave some of my students a squishy brain ball, right? I had a whole bunch of these squishy brain balls. I only had a few, and my class is huge. And so I rewarded some students with a squishy brain ball. And I love what one of them said to me. They said, Dr. Gurung, when I have the urge to reach for my phone, I now squeeze the brain ball. And I thought, wow, is that how easy it's going to be? Just let me give you something to distract yourself. And a number of students said, yeah, if I explicitly go, all right, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, then as long as I can nudge out that touch my phone thing, I've fought a battle. So and I don't think they realize how much of that divided attention can make a difference. This is another slightly older study, but I love it. Right? In this study, a really nice comparison: students who were allowed to have their phones in class, and students not allowed. And again, nice significant differences, right? Especially on unit exams, especially on final exams, not as much in class quizzing, but especially on final exams, especially on the unit exams, right? Those students who were not allowed, and this is fiated by the instructor, those students who were not allowed to use their phones scored significantly higher, right? Scored significantly higher. So again, there's data. When you have the intervention, right, whether it's in this case or in this case with where the phone is, when you have an intervention of sorts, it seems to work, right? It seems to work. And of course, it's not just the student's own choice, right? Freedom is one thing. I often tell my students this, uh, you know, it's often not just you if you're distracted, but it's the person next to you, right? The so-called collateral damage. In this study, it's not just multitasking hindering the student themselves, but it's also hindering people who can see the student distracted, right? And so in this study here, they had students either where they could not see somebody multitasking or where they could see somebody multitasking. All right. Okay, you may make the decision to just take notes on your computer. You may make the decision to not scroll. But if your neighbor is scrolling, what's going on? And yeah, the moment you have a view to multitasking, you do worse on quizzes and exams, right? And in this comparison right here, what's the effect of pure distraction on the comprehension of lecture content? Those students who could see somebody else, they were not, but they could see somebody else multitasking, and and they still did not do as well. Um, David, question in the Q&A, I sort of like that. Is it still a problem if they don't feel they have those thoughts about grabbing the phone? And the some data that I'll mention, but I like that question right now, is there are definitely higher performing students who do not fall prey to those thoughts. Now, whether they know they have the thoughts or admit to the thoughts or are conscious of the thoughts, that's still going to take some unpacking. But great thoughts there about, is this the same for all students? And definitely not. I'm a social personality psychologist. There are definitely individual differences here in how that goes, but more on that in just a little bit, right? So here we have somebody else is distracted, you're distracted as well, right? Let's take that up another whole notch. I love this study, attention contagion, right? A student's distraction is contagious. All right. Love this study. Had a Confederate either be distracted or had a Confederate who was attentive. All right. And then they measured their outcomes were how much does the participant in the study fidget? How attentive are they? How many words do they write down from the lecture? And what's their quiz on the score? Right? The yellow bars are participants sitting next to a Confederate who was pretending to be attentive. The blue bars are participants who are sitting next to a Confederate who was pretending to be distracted. And voila, What you see is you sit next to a distracted Confederate, you fidget more. But on the flip side, you sit next to somebody who's paying attention, you are paying more attention, you are writing down more words, you are doing better on the exam. All right. Uh, with much heartache, I will tell you, my son, my oldest kid, starts college next week. This is a study I'm sharing with him. I'm like, watch who you sit next to when you go to class, all right? And I'm also writing up this whole, all the things you wish your cognitive applied social cognitive dad would tell you about going to college. So watch for that, people. That'll be coming out in the Teaching Professor newsletter in about 3 or 4 weeks from now. So contagion. I love this, right? If somebody's distracted next to you, you're going to be more distracted as well. Let's get to some even, new types of social media though. A lot of students, let me go back to my example of the person scrolling, right? I'll be honest with you. I was mildly peeved, right? I was showing, they were watching this, in my view, yes, I'm biased, absolutely fascinating video on memory. It was the Clive Wearing case. Uh, Wild stuff. And here was this hand, thumb scrolling. So I went to my TAs and I said, what do you think? Thumb scrolling. And my TA said to me, but Dr. Gurung, that's how we pay attention. I said, what do you mean? And my TAs, 18, I mean, 19, 20, 21 said, very often we are watching something while we are also scrolling. That was new to me. Okay. That's not paying attention as I know it, right? But hey, I like the data. So here's some data, right? Um, they put it to the test. The Spence et al. Put this notion about, is that paying attention worthwhile? And they had students listen to new material, and either without Instagram, uh, they allowed Instagram use while they were listening to the story, or Instagram after listening to the story. And here's what's really interesting to me, right? No doubt, the no Instagram group did well. All right, the no Instagram group did pretty well. The and better than the no Instagram group. And of course, look, right after the story is done, not as much of an issue, and in fact, not significantly different from the no Instagram, right? This goes back to some students are very savvy about when they use social media, right? So this data seems to suggest that, hey, you know what? Uh, Maybe when they use it makes a difference. Now, I'm an oldie. I'm still like, look, can you just not use it during the class period, right? But maybe there's something to do with that timing. But again, when you look out at your students, you're seeing Instagram use. Yeah, that is distracting. That is not going to be do as well. And David, I'm right with you. The Instagram group, yeah, if you look at that, they're not getting 90s, right? They're not getting 90s. But something for us to think about. And Annie, I'm right with you. Offering students a break for them to do that. That's actually a strategy that seems to work pretty well. Is actually pause and go, hey, restrict your social media use to this time period in class. That should help. I think it really, again, varies with the class and the student. There are some students who may not be able to keep themselves from it, but I'm with you, Annie. I think that is maybe one way to go apart from a complete ban. And I'll get to a little bit more of that in the solutions and possibilities section, right? So yeah, data. You want data? You want some data to share with your students? There you go, right? This is one of a number of studies out there that you can use. But really, what's going on, right? Why? Why? Is it just that they're so used to doing this? Love this study from the Teaching of Psychology. Christina Shane Simpson and Tatiana Bakken actually give us some data on what's going on. And I love this. This nicely shows not only what types of social media are used. I want you to take a look at the differences between use during class time and during study time. All right. And again, the y-axis is the percent of students. And you see texting, Facebook, and many of us faculty, I think, oh, students aren't using Facebook anymore. As you can see, there's still some Facebook usage. Yes, Facebook, texting, and Instagram more so during, in quotes, study time, right? And I say in quotes because shouldn't you be just studying, right? But definitely more use during study time. But clearly, over 50% of students are texting during class. No big surprise. Close to 60% of students in their study were using Snapchat during class, right? Some of you have also seen your students doing the Be Real thing where they take the picture wherever they get a, and it's always surprises me when some of my students want to take it, do that during class. Now, to be fair, they do it during the break and try to get me in the picture. Sweet, but it's still this, oh, look, I'm being nudged. And for those of you who don't know what Be Real is, it's an app where whenever you get the nudge from the app, you need to take a picture at as close to that time, and both your cameras take a picture. So it shows you both the front and the back. Sort of funky. Took me a little bit of getting used to when I saw this happening all over. But yeah, there's so many things out there. So when you take a look at this, first off, if you're curious about how often they're using it a lot. But I think the bigger thing for us in this conversation is why. Why? And of course, the title of that article spills the beans, right? The reality is for a lot of students, it's the fear of missing out. But beyond that, I want to point out some really interesting things. In part one, I told you about mental health and mental health changes. Take a look at that. 29% of students in this study said they're using their social media as a mental break, right? 29% are using it as a mental break. That student who said to me, that's how we pay attention, may not be that far off. 19% of the students actually said they use social media to focus more. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that happens, okay? But at least in student minds, they're using social media to focus more, right? And let's not forget about that 27%. 27% are actually saying they're using it to engage in the material. Okay, and that's not too difficult to imagine. I think it's looking up a study that you may have mentioned, or something like that. And I see a lot of that is I'll mention a study in class, and immediately some students will Google it or look for a YouTube on it while they're in class, just because they want to learn more. So I think if you're really curious about what's going on, again, love this study. Shane Simpson just came out earlier this year and really gives us a good sense of what's going on or why they're doing it. And again, the points I want to make here, mental breaks, right? Students are using their social media for mental breaks. They are also engaging on it. And of course, there's that connection and things like that that also make a difference. I want to close part two by basically saying, let's let for a bigger picture, if you're curious, show me what are the big studies showing. Here's what it comes down. There is no dearth of information showing that social media use is linked to lower grades, linked to distraction, and linked to lower exam scores. So if you are looking for empirical support for your hunch that you use it and you do worse, there are three of a multitude of studies, but those are three really, really strong ones out there. And one of the things I want to highlight is what I mentioned a few minutes ago. I think this is really, really important as well, is that the data is accumulating that high performance students are using digital technologies to be productive. So that in that 27% who are using it to engage in the material, um, there's really some good evidence there that not all students are alike. There are some students who are definitely using it to advantage. So just if you look out and see a student using something in social media, then it may not just be used for distraction. So really, really nice things to keep in mind. All right, let me give you a few seconds to think. So we talked about the mental health relationships, right? Uh, Showed you some solid data. And as I said, a lot of those slides, I share them with my students. In this last part, to take us through for the last 20 minutes that we have together, let me give you some solutions, right? Or some things to think about. And also policies. All right, we can talk about some of them. I can see some of you already discussing some policies out there. I want to underscore something Mark put in there. We've got to be really good critical thinkers. You are absolutely right, Mark. Computers in education, yeah, a lot of that research is being funded by corporations, right? Which for me makes me look at it even more closely when the research says don't use these technologies, right? So especially when it's being funded by the big corporations, them having data that says don't use their stuff. That feels sort of good that they were allowed to do that, as it were. But again, really got to watch where's the funding come from, as always, right? Where's the message coming from? So let's look big picture in this section over here. Interestingly enough, as universities struggle and to compete for enrollments, there's actually data that universities from a very high level can be doing a lot more. This is a really fascinating study. I don't believe a study like this could be done in the United States. This study was done in Ireland and the UK. And what they did was they actually got access to an entire university's data usage. And they wanted to look at what is Wi-Fi being used for. And you would be surprised that that big red block, uh, it was linking to the cloud and technology and so on and so forth. But the big blue pie section, 20 or so percent, was for search, right? And of course, we don't know whether it's class-related searching or non-class searching. But this study was just really interesting to look at or understand what are people using university Wi-Fi for? And a lot of it was search, right? But what was interesting to me is if you take a look at those two big green pies, a lot of it is almost a little over 8% is social media use. And that dark green is shopping, right? Shopping. They could actually tell that people were using university Wi-Fi to do shopping, right? So we are seeing, and that's why this study right here says, "Hey, look, people, if you are worried about distraction, how you manage your university Wi-Fi is one level at which you can look at what's going on." But of course, that's just one part of solutions, and again, that's very top down, big brother-ish, right? Another very different way to come at it is what's going on in the classroom, right? Since 2014, people have been, yeah, it's been 10 years now that people have been duking it out. Should you be taking notes by hand or should be using a laptop? And many of you probably remember the 2014 Mueller and Oppenheimer study that said no, the pen is mightier than the laptop. That was followed by a bunch of studies that essentially didn't replicate those findings. Most recently, Uri et al. Did a meta-analysis, could not replicate the Mueller-Oppenheimer findings. And then here's a twist, right? Instead of some studies out in Norway seem to suggest that writing by hand may actually increase brain connectivity, right? So these are some studies looking at brain networking. Still way too early for me to make too much of it, but there may be more differences between handwriting and laptop typing than we know. And of course, all of us know that it's not just pen or laptop, it's are you distracted or not? I mean, if you have your phone on your table next to you and you are taking notes by hand, you could still be really distracted, right? So this whole, oh, if they're taking notes by hand, will make them less distracted, that's only part of it. It's what's the quality of the notes? How many words are they taking down? How much are they processing? How much are they taking what you're saying and writing down notes that make sense of it? And if you wondered about all of that, and if you thought, hey, goodbye, Mueller and Oppenheimer did not stand up, stand back, people. Now, 10 years later, there is another meta-analysis. July 2024, bigger meta-analysis on typed versus handwritten notes. And now the story is different. This 2024 meta-analysis actually suggests, hey, Mueller and Oppenheimer had something there. These handwriting, uh, students who are handwriting do seem to be doing better in terms of achievement, right? Do seem to be doing better as in terms of achievement. They're not saying that the typewritten notes folks are doing badly, But across the board, it seems to be that the handwriting notes are doing better. Now, why am I talking about this in the context of this talk? Because if a student is handwriting notes, that is getting them away from their technology and perhaps forcing them to not be as distracted by all the different technologies that are also on their computers or on their phones. Now, this is one of those, oh, they're so busy handwriting that they can't be distracted by technology. Yeah, you may be achieving that, but that's one way that you can go if you want to go that way, right? But as I said, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of things to pick from, right? We started off with the university Wi-Fi. Here, it's maybe how they take notes is a difference, right? But there are more ways. This, for example, metacognitive training. Metacognitive training studies now showing, and again, this is another really nice recent 2024 study showing that if you can train your students in how to capture when they are distracted, when they are straying, um, maybe you can reduce mindless reading. And I love this idea here, which is, and this idea of metacognitive training, I think really goes to a bigger, has a bigger heft to it because it's saying, look, don't just step into the classroom and focus on content. All right, let's address how to study. Right? Let's address how to study like a champion. Let's give them the techniques and show them how to do it. Right? So, and I think many of us would go, oh, no, they should have got that in high school, right? And I think what I've seen in higher education is many, many more of us are going into class and taking class time to say, here's how you study. Here are the techniques that you may need to be using to study. So I love this. Yeah, there's now evidence that metacognitive training is useful. Um, Identify the elephant slash social media in the room. Okay, if you look out and you see your if you see how your students are using social media, talk about it. Right, raise consciousness of digital distraction. This Flanagan et al. Really pulls together some very, very nice tips on managing student digital distraction. I've merged some of theirs with some bigger things that I'll be talking about. But uh, yeah, and I see Abraham right there. Woohoo, Abraham! Good job. Big shout out. Didn't know you were being here. Glad you're here. But I love this. There's so much in there. Yeah, raise consciousness. Raise consciousness. Collaborate with students to develop policies and incentivize appropriate use. Right. Just some of the many ways. Just some of the many ways you can do this. The big deal here is don't look the other way. Don't look the other way. I mean, boy, I double down. I'm in their faces. I show them so many of these slides. They cannot ignore, they cannot avoid the fact that I know that they're using social media, right? I'm still at the point where I give them the choice of how to do it, but address it very, very directly. And, tying this, addressing it very directly, I tie it to self-regulation, right? It's tough to nurture self-regulation, right? But as psychologists, we know self-regulation is a big deal, especially educational psychologists. When I look at the research on teaching and learning, you see us social personality psychologists going one way. You see all the educational psychologists doing stuff side by side, not enough cross-fertilization. And in the ed psych area, you see a lot more on self-regulation that I see in the social personality. We got to be merging that some more. We got to be merging that some more. And let's help nurture our students. Um, Self-regulate. Let's build their metacognition, right? Um, in this particular article, if you go through it, if you out there are one of those people who are going, I am only impressed by articles with really neat figures linking together 100 concepts. Well, you're in luck, people. This particular article in here has some really nice complex diagram. So if you are, but have they thought about this? Have they thought about that? This particular article does a really, really nice job about it. So yeah, the Kim et al. 2023. Again, you'll get all of these in the slides, but really, really nice. Does a good job of tying together ed psych and a lot of the other research there. But let's get more practical. I like to be very pragmatic, especially in these sessions here. Um, I have put together a whole bunch of links that you can use in your class and talk about pragmatic. I mean, here are things you could use tomorrow. You could use it tonight, actually. At this pedagogical influencer project, something funded by APS and worked on by many of my students in my lab, we pulled together a whole bunch of stuff that can be used. And here, the short link is as you can see in the top right, bit.ly/pip Gurung, PIP Gurung. And in here are things that artwork that you can use that illustrate studies. And the thing that I love the most, and a big shout out to all the psychology high school teachers who came to Oregon State in the summer of 2023. A bunch of them came to my office with my Study Like a Champion book and said, we love all these surveys that are in there, but wouldn't it be nice if there was a way for students to take it easily? And I thought that was a great idea. So I took all these self-assessment surveys from my Study Like a Champion book. So this is, um, are you a procrastinator? What's your mental health? How do you are you a good note taker? Took all those. Every chapter has one or two surveys. Took every survey that's in the book, put it into Qualtrics, put it here, and you are free to use it. And it is even set up so that your students can use it, and it gives them feedback on their scores and information about it. So minimal work for you. But if you want to build, and I'm walking the walk here, if you want to build your students' self-regulation, if you want to build your students' metacognition, check out the Assess Yourself link over there, and you can send them the link straight to the surveys. They can do all of them. So yeah, Dylan, you're right. I hear ya. I'm thinking, I bet a bunch of people would just like to have it easily. It's all there. So check that out at Pip Gurung. I also want to say, speaking of social media, and this is not if you can't beat them, join them, but this is a let's go to where they are. I also had a student made TikToks, and the video guides short little TikToks. And in case you're worried, it's not me. It is a student social influencer who put together TikToks on all the main study techniques. So instead of just saying retrieval practice is good and spacing is good and elaboration is good, they're all there on those video TikToks, and they're all free for you to use. So please explore the PIP project. In intro psych, I use a lot of these with my students and share them with them. Because when we talk about these optimal study strategies, not all students know what the best ones are, right? And of course, what are they? Well, there's work trying to figure out what students know. This study again earlier this year, uh, Hay and McDaniels et al. Asked students, which of these strategies are you using? And now, if you take a second and look at some of the big ones here, you should recognize a lot of these. There's good news and bad news, right? There's good news and bad news. Look, they're elaborating. Oh, look, spacing is number 3 is one of the most used. That's super, right? Because again, cognitive science in a nutshell, if you're in an elevator, 10 seconds of what should my students do? Retrieval practice and spacing. Okay, and students are saying, look, they're doing spacing, they're spreading it out. Then, yeah, but notice right next to them is cramming. They're also cramming a lot, right? But look at the most important technique, retrieval practice. It's right down at the bottom. It's right down at the bottom. And that's where our work is really cut out for us. Let's get retrieval practice going. Okay, let's get retrieval practice going. In this particular study, not only did they measure what students said they were doing, they looked at relationships with learning. And not surprisingly, the more students elaborated and organized, the better their self-reported learning. Not surprisingly, the more they crammed, the worse their learning. Okay, and this, folks, is one of our big challenges. Is we talk about these things, right? But it's really tough for students to do these things if they're distracted by Instagram and TikTok and all those other things going on, right? That's why this whole drive here with sharing all those distractions, these are the things we want them to do, but they're distracted by their technology and their social media, and we've got to come up with ways to deal with that. Now, people are trying, right? There's a wonderful chapter by Mark McDaniel and Einstein in this completely free 2023 Society for Teaching electronic book. It's called In Their Own Words. The entire book is free. going through the Teaching for Psychology page, and Mark has a great chapter basically saying, look, how do you teach students all these things? And they use the model of they should know strategies, KBCP. They should know the strategies. Students need to believe that they'll work. Show them some data that it works. That's why a lot of the slides that I showed you sort of suggest if you are doing more elaboration, if you're doing more organization, you're going to be better. But then they've got to commit to it. And then that whole theme of planning, implementation, they've really got to plan. Help them plan the implementation, how to implement it. Help them build metacognition. Help them self-regulate. We are beyond that point where we say, "Oh, people, here's the best ways to study, and now for content." No, just don't unpack what those best ways were, but then help them put it into place. Much more important for this first and second year students than even for the laters. Um, and again, if you're wondering, is doing these four things, sharing strategies, helping them believe, working, there's some nice accumulating work that shows that that's the case. For the last few years, that work is accumulating that says if we take the time as instructors to show them how to build some of these strategies, it's actually leading to better work. One last piece of data before I close. Some of you may be saying, hey, you've been talking so much about distractions and social media. Why not just ban it? Right? Well, I told you that first off, when I asked my students, when I shared them so many slides from that you've just seen, 70% of them still said, no, don't ban it. Let us choose. Right? In the face of that, let us choose. I wanted to share this piece. There is this study that suggests that, especially in terms of TikTok and Instagram in particular, a good number of students actually would even pay people to have their social media deleted. Now, whew, can you imagine? And look at that. Look at Instagram. And there's no difference between responders and users. For TikTok, big difference. Many of you may go, "Oh, I don't venture into TikTok." Sure, the user is much less likely to say, "Yes, please delete my TikTok." But I thought this was really interesting too, that people are actually saying we would pay to have somebody delete it, right? And honestly, folks, this really maps onto when I talk to my students. Some of them will say, Dr. Gurung, help me not use my phone. All right. We're at that point, right? Help me not use my phone. Well, I hope that you've seen that there's a lot of things in here that help you do exactly that. There's data in here to help you convince people what to do, why they should be doing it. And I hope I've left you with a whole bunch of different specifics on ways you can go. But really, address social media. Don't look the other way, right? Address what's going on. Uh, Discuss social media, come up with some policies, and I think you'll be surprised how willing students are to work with you to get this. But it's one of those things that I don't think we can just look the other way. Really something nice for us to talk into. There is the QR code again. If for whatever reason that doesn't work, there's my email. I'd be happy to send it to you directly. I'm going to do a quick scan because clearly there are some questions in the Q&A that I haven't got to. I'm going to look at them real quick. Andrew, do you see anything in there that in the last couple of minutes we have you think would be good for a direct answer? And I'm going to scan as well.
There's always questions about AI. It's a popular question with our audiences. There's a question about students using AI to facilitate group work and content reflection. There were also some questions about AI note taking. I don't know
Yeah.
if you wanted to respond to that.
Yes. Thank you. Actually, and that's actually perfect for a little bit of time because that's so, so important. I think just like addressing the social media in the room, uh, I think it is absolutely critical to directly address AI both in your syllabus and in your classroom. I think this is one of those things where AI, there are so many great affordances of AI. I'm going to tease you. I'm going to give you a special bonus in the dying minute, people. Yes, I think you'll enjoy playing with this. Google, as of last week and late last week, Google released something called Note Taker LLM. And you can upload a document into Note Taker LLM, and I think some students will be doing this, which I want to share with you. You can upload a document into Google Note Taker LLM. It'll create a summary for you, and then it does something funky. It creates an audio. So, because I like to play, I uploaded my syllabus into NoteMaker LLM, hit the audio button, and guess what? In seconds, it created a podcast on my syllabus. And the podcast features two individuals talking about my syllabus and highlighting the key points. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think I could have done a better job myself. So, yes, AI, play with it, people. There are great ways to use it. And that one in particular, as my term is about to start, I shared that with my students and I said, hey, be familiar with AI. I'm not looking the other way. I know you're using it. And watch out, people. I'm playing with it. So if you're using it, I'm pretty savvy about it too. And I think that's a pretty key thing to be uh, in this day and age. So it looks like we are at 11. Andrea, let me hand back to you. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody, for hanging in there. Great to have you.
Thank you, Dr. Regan Gurung, for that wonderful presentation. It was great to see one of our attendees research highlighted multiple times. So thank you, Abraham. Good to see you. Um, and just thank you to everyone for such an insightful discussion in the chat. We were so glad to have you here with us today. Please look for a recording email in the coming days, as well as your attendance certificates. They should be delivered by the end of the week. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you at another webinar again in the future. We do these every month. Thank you all.